So anybody that sees my content on Instagram or my content on YouTube already knows how I feel about the red pill at this point. But I need to continuously chop at the base of that tree because I feel like that is fundamentally why God has called me to this space, or at least one of the reasons why God has called me to this space. And so this one is about the red pill is toxic to a man's spirit. There are things that I'm going to get into in the future where, the red pill does get some things right. A broken clock is right, a couple times a day. Let's make no mistake about that. But it gets more things wrong. And so what really, really happens is that it plants a seed of toxicity in a man's heart, mind, and spirit. And so two things happen to a man. And I've seen this time and time again. Number one, it makes men angry and bitter. And I know a lot of guys in that space already are talking about, oh, you're just in the anger phase. You're not in the acceptance phase. There's no such thing as that. If you look at the manosphere, the red pill, what's happening right now, everybody's fragmenting, everybody's arguing, everybody's get a vasectomy or don't have kids or don't get married. And everybody's arguing on what these tenets actually are because it's not based on anything, okay? Manosphere was an offshoot of the pickup artist sort of era, and the red pill is a branch of the manosphere. So when you take it back to its roots and it's at its foundation, it's about fornication. It's about hedonism. It's about a man giving into his carnal desires and his lust. It's completely hollow, and that's why you're seeing it break down, because the fruit of that tree is fundamentally rotten, and it is exactly what leads to bitterness and anger and resentment in a man's heart. And I noticed that in myself, is that the more content I consumed, past the small bit of truth, and remember, the greatest heresies grow best under the shade of truth, right? So there could be 10% truth, but if 90% of it is bitter and toxic, how do you think you're going to end up? It's no different than the phenomenon of you are the sum of the 7 people you hang out with, or whatever the heck the metric is. If you're consuming this content all the time, beyond the truths that you gain, all you gain is bitterness and toxicity, because now the lens in which you view the world is all women are promiscuous, all women are going to cheat on you, you're going to get screwed in a divorce, you shouldn't have kids, all you should pursue is financial, material success, and racking up your notch count sky high. And so you end up, and this is my second point, you end up on the other side of being 30s, 40, 50, and you're an ancestral dead end. And not only are you an ancestral dead end, you're bitter and you're toxic and you hate the world. But then you know where that hate, what's funny about this is that in the end result of being indoctrinated by the red pill and the manosphere is that you end up toxic, angry, and bitter. You end up an ancestral dead end. And after all of that hate you've directed at the world for so many years, you know where that hate ends up getting direct back to? Yourself. Because you're now 40, 50, 60, whatever, upper 30s, right? And you've accumulated all this material wealth. You've racked up your notch count. And what do you have staring back at you? Well, you stare long enough into the abyss, it ends up staring right back at your face. So all that hate that you put into the world, all of that bitterness, all of that, all women are this or that, ends up looking right back at you. And you look at your life and the fruits of your life, and you see nothing. You see nothing. You see nothing but you caving in and you living your life like a grown boy, like a grown child, instead of leading your life with virtue, starting a family, being committed to one woman, getting married, not getting a vasectomy, or any of that other degenerate advice that gets often propagated. Is that's how a man lives a wholesome life. And there's a small percentage of men that are called to serve God's kingdom in a different way by being celibate. But that's a lower percentage. I'm talking about the general rule here, not the exception to the rule. But, again, to just repeat that, is that the fruits of this manosphere red pill life is that you end up angry, bitter, you end up an ancestral dead end. And in the end result of directing all that hate outside of yourself, that hate ended up getting directed right back at you. So the man that you stare in the mirror is a hollow vessel of a man. And I've never met a man that has a harem of women in his 40s and 50s that's been truly satisfied. But I've met plenty of men in their 40s and 50s that have families that love them. They maybe have grandchildren. They have a wife that loves them. They have children that adore him. I've met many men like that who are deeply fulfilled, deeply loved, and live meaningful lives. So tell me, which way, modern man, which way, Western man, the way of the grown adolescent child who pursues material wealth and carnal desire, or the way of the virtuous man who practices restraint, temperance, and directs his life toward a life of service toward God and toward his family, toward his children, and leaving a legacy behind. See, Rollo Tomassi talks about there's no such thing as a man being surrounded by his family when he dies. And that's exactly what a man who's not going to be surrounded by his family when he dies would say. This is the same guy that tells young men, in order to be high value, that they need to get vasectomies. They need to literally make themselves ancestral dead ends. Get snipped. Make all this money. Don't get married. So are we really going to continue to take advice from a guy like that who says, yeah, there's no men that are surrounded by their families when they die, when this is the advice that he shoots out there? I think this guy has been wearing his beanie on too tight for too long, and it's really limited his brain cells and his capacity to think and to feel in his heart. And especially as a guy that's a self-professed Christian, this kind of advice blows my mind. But not to dog on him too much. I pray for his salvation like I do all the men in this space. I truly do. I have no real hatred or bitterness or resentment towards any of these guys. I just think they're leading men astray, and that is why I'm here. So guys, you consume this content for too long, you're going to be bitter, you're going to be angry, you're going to be resentful, you're going to hate women. And, you know, perception a lot of times is reality. So if you view the world that all women are hoes or all women are this or that, that's probably what you're going to experience. Okay, you're going to experience anger and bitterness, and it's not going to go away. You're just going to stoke that flame the more women that you sleep with, and the longer that you stay single without a virtuous woman at your side, without giving yourself to God and his rules and his commandments and principles. And then you're going to become an absolute genetic black hole dead end. Is that how you want your bloodline to live on? You're going to be in the ground at some point. You're going to have to face God at some point. And whether you like it or not, you are going to profess that Christ is king, and your knee is going to bow. And you are going to bow. And you will be on your knees. And so when you reach the gates and God asks, what are the fruits of your life, my son? What are you going to show him? You're going to show him a tree that's barren, that's produced bitter fruit, that's fallen off the tree and the tree's decaying? Or are you going to show a beautiful, full tree produced by a life of virtue and service and dedication and restraint and temperance and love and grace and mercy, not being overtaken by a spirit of discontentment and anger? Because these are the seeds that the manosphere and the red pill are planting within men. And there's no wonder why it's fragmenting before our eyes. So guys, before you become poisoned, before you become jaded, before you get to this point where, you know, you're listening to these degenerate guys like, was it Marlin? I can't even know the guy's name. Fresh and Fit. He talks about don't get married till 35, make 6 figures, and sleep with 50 plus women. But after that, also complain that there are too many promiscuous women while you go out there and actively make these promiscuous women that you also detest at the same time. See how nonsensical this stuff is? It makes no sense. It's the blind leading the blind. It's a bunch of children that can't control their peepees and want to run around and say, I hate girls, I hate women, while going out and perpetuating the problem. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. These are the dudes that we're listening to. Anyways, I'm on a tangent now. But stop listening to this stuff. Maybe take the 10% truth, apply a Christian worldview to it, so you actually gain the wisdom and the discernment needed to take the good from the bad, and then discard of the rest because it's garbage. God bless.